and welcome or welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle, the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, aka the pilot, and then use it to decide if we should watch the entire series. I know it's a bit of a tall order, isn't it? Now, on this episode of The Pilot Principle, we are taking a look at episode 1 of Netflix's new, I'm going to call it a period drama. Yeah. And that is 100 Years of Solitude. In the mythical town Macondo, 7 generations of the Buendia family navigate love, oblivion, and the inescapability of their past and their fate. I used to watch a lot of Spanish language programs, but I've just kind of fallen off over the years. In fact, my watch list is filled with Spanish language shows that I just haven't gotten around to yet. So when I saw that 100 Years of Solitude was coming out and it was new, I was like, do you know what? Now's the chance to recapture. I don't know what I'm recapturing, okay? My interest in a language that I may never get around to being fluent in. That's what I'm capturing, okay? Sue me. So... as well as being interested in the Spanish language of the show, I also have heard of the book 100 Years of Solitude, which I have set myself the insurmountable task of reading in the original Spanish language. Now, I know what you're wondering. Have I ever read a full book in Spanish? No. No crew, I have not. Do I know when I will get round to ticking off this particular goal? Also, no. However, I figured there's still no reason to deny myself the pleasure of its adaptation. As per, before we get into the nitty gritty of the pilot episode itself, let's run through some credits. So we have a pilot title of Macondo, which is the fictional town mentioned in the series synopsis. Speaking of synopsisize, the pilot synopsis tells us that fearing a ghost and a curse, Ursula and Jose Arcandillo leave their town to establish a new home along a few others, braving a journey through terrain. We have an episode length of 1 hour and 4 minutes, and a series length of 8 episodes, and this is of course being shown over on Netflix. The pilot was written by Jose Riviera, and Riviera has written the movie Letters to Juliet and The Motorcycle Diaries, which did in fact win Riviera an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. I know, right? Good for you, Riviera. The pilot was also written by Natalia Santa, and Santa has written Summer in Venice, 151 episodes of Summer in Venice to be exact. The pilot was directed by Alex Garcia Lopez, and Lopez has directed episodes of Misfits. I'm talking the Channel 4 throwback series Misfits. Random but great. Continuing on in the theme of random but great, Lopez has also directed episodes of The Witcher and a whole litany of the MCU TV thingamabobbies. So Luke Cage, Daredevil, and The Punisher. Moving over to cast, and the pilot stars Marco Gonzalez, who plays Jose Arcadio Buendia, and Gonzalez has starred in actually nothing since 2008, but he has starred in Hospital Central and La Hora Fria. Susana Morales plays Ursula Iguaran, later Ursula Buendia, and Morales, well, actually this is her first role, bar an extra role that she had 12 years ago. Good for you. We love a comeback story. And finally, to note on the selected cast list is Claudio Cattaneo, who plays Colonel Aureliano Buendia. And Cattaneo has starred in a Mano Limpia y La Nieta Elegida and Dear Gentleman. Really like putting my non-used Spanish skills to the test here. The last thing to say about 100 Years of Solitude, except for the fact that, yes, I mentioned it's 8 episodes, but this is part 1. So there will be 2 parts, and in total there will be 16 episodes to the entirety of the series. As well as that, I know I touched on it in the beginning, but the series is based on the novel of the same year, which was published in 1967 by Colombian author Gabriel García Márquez, and it is a magical realism story which remains widely acclaimed and is recognized as one of the most significant works both in the Hispanic literary canon and in world literature. Now, allow me to completely distill the literary accolades by judging the first 10 minutes of the television adaptation. Why the first 10 minutes? Well, I know I say this every week, but I do like to emphasize on the importance of the first 10 minutes, which is supposed to set up the story and excite the reader, or in our case, the watcher, in continuing onwards in this scripted journey of which we embark as soon as we press play. And the first 10 minutes goes like this. We open on what looks like an old house that's been left to rot, which contains at least one dead body. There is a person alive in this house that has been left to the elements, and they are going through an ancient-looking kind of old leather-bound book, which within its pages contains an Ouroboros, a family tree, and a story. As the narrator begins reading the story on the pages of this leather-bound book, we cut to the face of Colonel Aureliano Buendia, who, just as he is about to be killed by a firing squad, remembers his childhood. And then we get the title card, 100 Years of Solitude. And then forget everything you've seen so far, because we rewind further still in time to the wedding of José Arcadio Buendia and Ursula Iguaran, whose marriage was predicted, however also vehemently contested by their parents. Why was their marriage contested by their parents, you wonder? Because they're cousins. Yeah. Now, Ursula's mother tells Ursula that if she has a child with Jose, then they will end up having pigtails, as in, yeah, squiggly, wiggly pigtails. Ursula is, of course, terrified of this reality and refuses to consummate her marriage, much to Jose's frustration. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and when some guy makes a quip about Jose's lack of a sex life with Ursula, Jose kills him. As men do, apparently. And then Jose uses the fact that he had to kill a man to convince Ursula to have sex with him so that no one else has to die. And that's about the 15-minute mark. Now, as an intro, it was a little confusing. From what I could ascertain, there were 3 timelines, but the 3 timelines also felt very separated. We do have the use of a narrator, but I'm not even sure who is narrating the story and when, as in which point in time they are narrating it from. So yeah, just a little bit of confusion for me going on in those opening 15 minutes. We do get a teeny tiny taste of Jose and Ursula's personalities. And I suppose by the end of the intro, there is a level of fear for their unborn children. Even though it's not that much of a dramatic end to Act 1, which it doesn't have to be, we do kind of get a sense of the start of an adventure. It just wasn't very gripping. Before we chat character, hi, hello, how are you? That one especially goes out to the new subscribers. Thanks for joining the crew. Great to have you on board. No pressure, but feel free to suggest possible pilots that you would like for me to review, either directly through Spotify if that's where you're listening, or over on Instagram, which I do check periodically because yes, I don't actually mind the sound of my own voice, but you know what? A little bit of conversation would be nice too. Right, character-wise, we have got 2 people to talk about. Firstly, Jose Arcadio Buendia, who we watch over the course of the pilot episode develop into an explorer of sorts as he leaves his ancestral village. Well, his leaving wasn't really a choice. He was basically chased away by the literal ghost of the man that he killed. Now we watch as Jose's interest in science, space, and communication, and the development of his town, Macondo, grows throughout the course of the pilot. But ultimately, I would say Jose is running away. I think he's running away from his past and also from the foreshadowing of his future, which he pretends to care little to nothing about. And by that, I mean the fact that his children and children's children may end up having some sort of issues because of the, incest. Even though we do spend a solid hour with this guy, I don't much like Jose. I mean, he's all right, but I don't think we get to know him very well. Him or his cousin, wife, Ursula. Now, Ursula basically lives in fear of her mother's tale of an inbred child who was born with a pig's tail, not with pigtails like a hairstyle, an actual pig's tail. Ursula does have a bit of fight in her as we see her put off Jose's advancements straight after their wedding. And even though I don't get the sense that she believes in her husband's dreams of, expansive knowledge and building out their town, and even with leaving the village, it just kind of feels like Ursula is going along with what's happening to her. Yeah, she feels like quite a passive character, which is a bit of a shame because I liked the sort of fighter element of her personality that we get when we first meet her, but that very quickly disappears. To be honest, by the end of the pilot episode, I kind of get the sense that Ursula is fed up with Jose, but the poor woman is in too deep. She literally married her cousin against her family's wishes, moved a 2-year journey away, and has 2 kids with the man. I mean, how do you come back from that? I'm not really getting the sense of who Jose or Ursula is, who they are, from the pilot episode. And I think that might be intentional because from the series synopsis, I don't know how much Jose and Ursula are going to feature throughout the 16 episodes to come. They could very well just be the root to the family tree. And now it is time for a quick interlude to see what film and TV life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. As per, we start with books, and I'm just here to tell you that I finished listening to Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, which is the second book in the Alex Stern what's going to be a trilogy, but the third book isn't out yet, which is such a shame, and there is no news on when the third book is coming. So for now, I'll just have to try and retain all that information that I've consumed over the last 2 weeks. Great. Otherwise, I am about halfway through the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, and it's getting interesting. Moving over to film, do you know what? I forgot to mention on the last pod that I have in fact seen Wicked. I can't believe it completely slipped my mind, considering it is literally everywhere. The promo has been going on for months. I cannot swipe, scroll or blink without seeing pink or green. I watched it. It was good. I enjoyed it. I think I was a bit stingy with my Letterboxd rating. I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. And it's not because it wasn't good. I enjoyed it. I've seen the West End. I've seen it on West End twice. But at the end of the day, I'm a cinephile and there's certain things I can't unsee. And personally, there are a couple of plot holes. Certain things were not explained in Wicked Part 1. Thank you very much. And so despite the fact that Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande's vocal range gave me so many goosebumps throughout the entirety of the film, plot-wise, 3.5. And to be honest, that's all I've done film-wise. However, Craven the Hunter and Queer are coming out very soon, so I'm hoping to tick both of those off my list very soon. And finally, moving over to TV land, I finished watching A Man on the Inside on Netflix, which stars Ted Danson? I want to say Ted Danson. He's the guy from The Good Place. There are many guys in The Good Place. He's the guy who who plays Michael. He plays Michael on The Good Place. That was very sweet because I'd watched the pilot episode and then wasn't going to watch any more. And someone said, stick with it. And I said, sure, whatever. And I'm glad I did. I also did finish watching River, which is an old BBC police drama, and that was watched for educational purposes, and I learnt things, so great. I am keeping up to date with Dune Prophecy. Actually, I haven't watched the last episode that's just come out, but I'm keeping up, and beautifully shot is all I can say about that. And oh yeah, I absolutely smashed through Black Doves. That was the podcast episode I did last week, so feel free to check that out to see if that's going to be a show for you. But yeah, man, just completely blitzed it. I'm so behind on everything. I just thought, why add another one to the list to be behind on? Which is a great segue to the catch-up list. So I did mention a few weeks ago that I have so many things I'm behind on. So specifically looking at the TV shows that I'm going to try to blitz by the end of the year and already intend to fail blitzing by the end of the year, we have The Day of the Jackal, Say Nothing, Only Murders in the Building. I cannot believe I haven't watched the latest series of Only Murders in the Building. I freaking love that show. We've also got The Bear. Not gonna lie, I probably won't try to get to The Bear. There's something, I don't know what it is. I just lost interest, and I think Kami just deserves to sit in that fridge just a little longer. I haven't touched Agatha all along, but that one I do want to try to watch by the end of the year. There's the House of the Dragon season 2. I know, right? You're like, but don't you sit around talking about TV all day and you can't even catch up with TV? Listen, it's hard out here in these streets. Also, probably not going to get to watching House of the Dragon this year, let's face it. Baby Reindeer is one that I haven't watched, but I'm going to actually try. I think the episodes aren't very long, so I think I can smash that out in the day. I'm smashing everything. I had a smash burger this week, so smash has become about a fifth of my vocabulary. And the last thing on my possible catch-up list is... Listen, I'm not even embarrassed that I haven't watched it yet. I'm just keenly aware that I'm one of the few people on Earth who have not yet seen Squid Games. And Squid Games Series 2 comes out on December 26th, so I've got time. I've got time to binge the first series. You could even argue that that was my plan all along. So if we're going to use that logic, I don't want anybody to come for me for not having yet seen Squid Games. Okay, that's enough of my TV failings. Let's get back into talking about the pilot episode of 100 Years of Solitude. Fast forwarding over to the end of episode Hook, we see things come full circle, Ouroboros, if you will, and Ursula has her second child, who does not have a tail. None of her children have tails. A son called Aureliano, who has the power of premonition. And he is the man from the start who we see about to possibly die by a firing squad. But this is good. I feel connected now. Well, at least more so than I did at the start. Now, in terms of a serial arc, you know what? I don't have many predictions for where I think the series will go. I mean, I suppose Jose is convinced that Macondo will become some sort of important town. So I guess that will happen. But I doubt Jose will be able to maintain any sort of peace, power or ownership if that happens. I haven't seen those sort of leadership characteristics from him. I get that half his buddies followed him from their ancestral hometown village to travel 2 years to settle at this place by the river that he had a vision to call Macondo, but I don't necessarily think he's a leader, but perhaps time will tell. Now, this whole incest pigtails thing keeps hanging over our heads, so I suppose there might be something off about Jose and Ursula's boys, except for the fact that Aureliano has some sort of premonition abilities. Unless Ursula's mom was just trying to scare her. You know, that could also just be a possibility. And then she's living with that fear for the entire time, but it's going to amount to nothing. I am curious about how far up and or down the Buendia family tree that we will get. Will we see Ursula and Jose Sr. grow older, die, see their children grow older, have children, etc., etc.? It's not a prediction. I'm just curious. Oh, also, we are introduced to a character called Melquiades, who is a traveler of sorts, who kind of encourages Jose's curiosities about the world. And Melquiades seems all right from the pilot episode, at least. We just get a little bit of him. But as things progress, I suppose we will find out whether Melquiades is actually a friend or a foe of Jose. Perhaps he'll try and take over Jose's town. Perhaps he has an endgame or a vision of his own. Perhaps he will develop into an antagonist. Now, I will say, in terms of the pilot's strengths, it was very beautifully done, as in the shots and the pans and the editing that was used to show the passage of time throughout the course of the episode. I think all of those are fantastic, as well as the literal physical ghost of the man Jose killed. And you could really feel the manifestation of that character pushing Jose and Ursula out of their village. And I think, yeah, that was a really, really good hook to propel those characters into what would become their journey and their life. In terms of where I personally think the failings of the pilot episode lay, it needed an anchor point for who was telling this story. We start with a man reading the story of a man who is possibly himself, Aureliano, who is telling the story of his life, starting with his parents, Jose and Ursula. Where were we? You know, whose story is this? Who is the protagonist? It felt untethered. I felt listless watching the pilot episode, unsure of who I was supposed to be rooting for and when in time I was supposed to be rooting for them. And I think if you don't have that automatic character investment, it makes it hard to stay with a story, especially a story that's an hour and 4 minutes long. Okay, I've said all I need to say. Everything is off my chest, I think. Yeah, I don't have anything left to say. So now it's time for you to make a decision. So based on everything I have said thus far, here are the reasons why I think 100 Years of Solitude might be for you. Firstly, if you, like moi, love a book to movie adaptation of a thick piece of literature that you have no idea when you'll get to, then I would consider watching 100 Years of Solitude. Think of it as watching the movie adaptation of Anna Karenina, Les Mis and Gone with the Wind. It's fine. By the time you actually get around to reading the book, you'll have forgotten all about what happened in the adaptation. Another reason why this series might be for you is if you are interested in exploring a new genre. I'm talking magical realism. What does that even mean? I guess we see a little bit in the manifestation of the ghost of the man Jose killed, and there are various premonitions taking place throughout the episode. So yeah, if you want to see a bit more about how that is realised in a series, that's something new. That's different. When was the last time I talked about a magical realism show on the podcast? Never. So yeah, if you're interested, give it a watch. And finally, if you like stories that span generations within a family, that's another reason that I think this show might be for you. I personally love that shit, to be honest. I love when a story goes through the lives of everybody in its family. Kind of like Brothers and Sisters, or Charmed. Maybe not quite Charmed. On the flippity flip side, here are some reasons why 100 Years of Solitude might not be for you. Firstly, to mention is that it is a bit slow. So if you prefer to watch something that's a little bit more pacing, then yes, skippity scoop. Secondly, if you prefer to know right off the bat who your characters are, I'm talking antagonist, protagonist, also setting and just a sense of structure in a way, then I think you might very quickly be frustrated with 100 Years of Solitude, because I feel like you don't get the answer to any of those questions in the pilot. And finally, if you don't like a lengthy setup to your shows, then I think 100 Years of Solitude might not be for you. In terms of a pilot score, I will be giving this a 3 out of 5. Now, I was tempted to say 2 out of 5 because it's slow and it feels uncertain. And by uncertain, I mean that it feels like it doesn't know what it's trying to tell the audience. But what slightly bolstered the score for me was the circularity, so ending where we began and feeling like we're about to finally embark on an adventure, on a story, on the entire point of all of this. And to be fair, I am also making allowances for context. It is a 16 episode series that spans multiple generations. So it does kind of feel like the purpose of episode 1 was purely backstory. And lest we forget, this series is in fact based on, what did they call it? One of the most significant works both in the Hispanic literary canon and in world literature. How am I supposed to argue with the adaptation of something like that? Thanks for joining me this week. If you are curious to know, I think I'm going to give episode 2 a go. Personally, I'm curious to see if we're finally going to get into the meat and bones, or if we're still going to be stuck with more backstory. Let me know what you plan to do over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principle. Oh, also in the comments below if you are listening on Spotify. Also, do holler at me for suggestions for what pilot review I should do next, because I'm not going to lie to you, it's honestly slim pickings at this time of the year, which means I'm basically winging it. So let's just see what we turn up with when I catch you on the next episode.